Hey guys, welcome to another video. In this video we'll be stripping the cabinet of this Columbus Model 65 vintage radio and cleaning the chassis ready for repair. Alright, so this is the Columbus Model 65 vintage radio. In this video I want to get the radio ready for restoration. So what I want to do is strip the chassis out of it, clean it, and also clean up the back of the cabinet. Now I've also made a bad discovery on this cabinet here. You might be able to see the borer holes. So we've got a little bit of woodworm in the radio cabinet itself. So what I'm going to do is strip the whole cabinet bare, and then we can deal with the woodworm situation. Okay, taking a look in the back of the radio here, you can see that a lot of dust has accumulated up over the years. Now looking at the top of the cabinet here, looks like to be evidence of a old spider's nest of some sort, but yeah, you can see them up the top there. Now there's also evidence of mice in this cabinet, so there's mice droppings down the back there and also down the side. So yeah, it'll be good to take this chassis out and just give this cabinet a really good clean up. We'll make a start just removing all these knobs and the other bits and pieces on the front of the cabinet. Right, so we've got the cover for the front dial off and all the radio knobs here. Now just one thing to note, that these are all Bakelite knobs, so I'll give them a bit of a clean up later. Now just taking a look in the back of the cabinet here, I think the first thing we're going to do is just strip away this speaker first. And as you can see, there's also a speaker selection switch. So you can select set, both, and EXT, which I'm guessing stands for external. And we'll just unscrew the speaker from the cabinet. With the speaker now removed from the cabinet, we can move on to removing the chassis. Now what I'm doing here before we remove the chassis out of the cabinet is I'm just making sure that dial isn't fixed into the cabinet in any way. Now I can't see any screws holding it to the cabinet, so what I'm going to do is just undo the screws holding this chassis and we'll see if we can just move the whole unit out. Before removing the chassis, I'm just going to tidy up this cabling here. This will just make things a little bit easier when we do pull the chassis from the cabinet. Now if we take a look at the bottom of the cabinet here, we can see that we've got two screws. They pass through the cabinet and then screw into the chassis itself. So what we're going to do is undo those screws and see if we can pull that chassis out. Now just taking a look at the bottom of the cabinet there, see a lot of mouse droppings there and also evidence of the mouse eating, hopefully not the radio components itself, but we'll take a look at the bottom of the chassis and see what we can find. Right, so we're just having a quick look underneath the bottom of the radio chassis, and you can already see there's something there that doesn't quite belong, and there's also evidence of the mouse chewing some of this componentry here, so I'll have a quick look through later and just see what else has been damaged. Now the radio's been in storage for quite a long time, so these things happen, so we'll clean it up and we'll just see what we can do with this set. So we'll start off by vacuuming out the cabinet, and then we'll move on to the radio chassis. Right, so we'll make a start underneath the chassis here. We'll just give it a bit of a clean up, and we'll remove our little friend there, the dead mouse. Now I find a good effective way of dusting is just by using a paintbrush and just following along with the vacuum cleaner. I'm just going to see if I can just vacuum up that dead mouse, just so I'm not touching it with my hands. Now that the bottom of the radio chassis is clean, we can start cleaning the top of the chassis. Now that we've removed as much dust as we can using the brush and vacuum cleaner, just going to remove any remaining dust just using a air compressor and air duster. The next step is I'm just going to clean off these tubes here, just using a damp cloth just to remove that dust. And on top of these metal components here, I'm just going to give them a bit of a wipe just with a rag with WD-40. You can see there's a little bit of corrosion just on the tops of them, and I'll just give them a quick wipe off. Now one thing to note, just as you're wiping these tubes down with a damp cloth, just be careful you don't get the damp cloth over the marking, because that'll just wipe off. Now before we wrap up the video, I've got a package here that's arrived from the South Island, and it comes from YouTuber Vintage Radio Steve. Now he also runs a vintage radio resource website for New Zealand radios, vintageradio.co.nz. We'll go ahead and we'll open it up and see what's inside. Okay, we'll open up the package and we'll take a look inside and see what we've got here. Oh great, so this is just what we need for the future part of this radio project. So this is a dim bulb tester, and looks like we've got some more capacitors here for the Colt radio. So Steve and Nikki, thanks very much for sending that through. That's much appreciated. I love this touch on the business card too, just with the radio schematic on the back. Well, that brings us to an end of another video. Stay tuned for more videos on this vintage Columbus radio. Still to come is the cabinet repair, where we'll be treating the borer or woodworm in the cabinet. And following on after that, I'll have a special guest where we'll be looking at the electronics on this Columbus radio. Take care, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.